Hi, this is Gary with MacMost Now. On today's episode, let's take a look inside your library folder. Now in your home folder, you've got all of your documents. You've got your movies, you've got your photos, you have your music, you have all the files you need to get to. Up above your user folder, you've got things like the system folder and the library folder. Now the library folder contains all these different files that you're accessing every day, but you may not even know it. Things like fonts, things like cache files for your browser, things like preference files for different applications. Let's go and take a look inside the library folder just so you know more about how your computer works. So here I am looking in a Finder window. I'm using the column view so I can easily see where things are. And I'm in my home folder and I can see there's my documents and movies and music. Now there's also a library folder here, but we can't see it. It's kind of hidden from us as just a general hint that we really shouldn't be messing with the files in there. But you can still get to it. And the way to get to it, the easiest way, is use the Go menu where you still don't see the library folder. But if I hold down the Option key, it appears. And I can select Go Library. And now you can see it's shifted over and it's added this invisible folder here, library, and now I can look at the files and folders in it. Now you're going to see tons of different folders in here, and it's going to be different than what I see because the contents of the library folder depend upon what type of Mac you have, what type of applications, utilities, and things that you have installed on your system. So some of these things will be the same and some will be different. For instance, you most likely have a fonts folder here, and inside of it you would have any custom fonts for this user. Notice I have none for this user. I just have the standard Mac fonts here. In addition, you will have a preferences folder, and inside of there are the preferences for all of the different applications you have. Even if you don't think of an application as having preferences, it does probably have a few settings. So it'll remember those and put them in files like com dot and then the name of the company and the name of the application. So for instance, here's the activity monitor preferences. It's com.apple.activitymonitor.plist. Sometimes they'll be in folders, like for instance here are the Photoshop settings, and that's in a folder there. And you can find all sorts of different things in here. For instance, if I scroll down, I could find Final Cut, and there's Microsoft Office 2011. So you can find all your different preferences for different files in here. The only time this is useful is if an application is particularly misbehaving. It just isn't working anymore and you don't mind losing all your preferences. Sometimes you can go in here, find the preference file, throw it away, and when you run the application it's like running it for the first time, and sometimes it can clear out problems. Now another very important folder in the library folder is the application support folder. Now this is where a lot of different things are thrown in. For instance, if you have a streaming music app, it has to store all that music. It's not going to store it as documents. It's going to put it in the application support folder in the subfolder for it. So there's all sorts of different things when you get extensions for different applications, when you get new content for different applications. For instance, I look in GarageBand, there's the instrument library. If I look under, say, Microsoft here, I can see there's Microsoft Silverlight. That's where that's stored. So anytime you add something to an application and it's not going to alter the application file, that'll remain the same original application file, but it'll put those things inside the application support folder. Now often in application support you also find caches. Caches are temporary files. For instance, the most common type of cache is a web browser cache where it will store a web page, so if you go back to it again immediately, it doesn't have to fetch it again from the internet. But most of those are stored under caches in the caches folder here, and you can see things sorted by application. So for instance, if I go down here, I can find there's the Safari cache where all the pages I've recently visited are temporarily cached. And it's amazing how many applications have caches, even ones you don't think of as having something to cache. We'll put little things like, for instance, iMovie will put little thumbnails and bits in there so it doesn't have to recreate those. Now I mentioned before that if you look here, this is the library folder that's inside of my home folder called MacMost here. Now there are two library folders that you have to deal with. This is for the specific user, MacMost. Now a Mac can have more than one user. There's a library folder at the system level. If I go up here above users to Macintosh hard drive and I look and I see there's system folder and applications, and there's a library folder there too, and you can see a lot of the same things here. You can see there's application support, and you find, for instance, preferences here. And this is where things would be stored that have to do with all of the users rather than just that single user there. So you'll find a lot of different things. For instance, here's fonts. So of course here you can find all of the fonts I've got on this machine because as I've installed fonts, there's the original ones and the ones I've installed. I've set it so that these fonts are available for all users on the machine. So they're going to be stored at the top level library folder, not in the MacMost library folder, because then I switch to a different user and they wouldn't be available to that user. So when looking into your library folder, keep in mind you've got the two library folders, and if it's something for the entire computer, it's in the main one, and if it's something just for that one user, it is in the user's library folder. In general, for most users, you should never have to look in the library folder. Things like preferences and caches and all that can be dealt with inside the individual applications. For instance, if I wanted to clear the Safari cache, I can do that using the Safari preferences. If I wanted to set a specific preference, I should be able to do that inside the preferences for that app. If I wanted to add a font, I would do it using the font book utility. So there's no real reason for the typical Mac user to ever go inside the library folder, but sometimes it's useful to know it's there and know what it's used for. Hope you found this useful. Till next time, this is Gary with MacMost Now. Want more video tutorials? Just go to MacMost.com, click on the videos link at the top of the page, and then you can view all of the hundreds of MacMost videos by category.